Good morning. Haiti Oropesa with Florida U Judge, and welcome. Today we have Stephanie Pointer and Daryl Heish. They're going to be hosting this morning's broadcast. I'm going to be working from behind the scenes, but they're going to have as a special guest Luke Lirot, legendary Luke Lirot, and they're going to be talking about recent headlines we've all seen locally, particularly, and they've also gone national about the recent shooting where a 20-year-old, a 14-year-old were shot and killed down in Ybor City. And so they're going to be talking about that and subsequent um, efforts to limit the hours of operation of businesses in Ybor. There was a proposal that businesses close at 1 instead of 3, and also the imposition of a curfew on juveniles. This Tuesday, I found out yesterday, there's going to be a town hall this Tuesday. You can go catch the information on Tampa Police Department's social media page on Facebook. But there's a town hall this Tuesday. The citizenry, you all should get involved. Those who are going to be affected, business. I know that my reading of these events, there was an incredible opposition by businesses and citizens about the proposal of shutting down the or having businesses close a little earlier in order to prevent additional shootings or for safety measures. Luke Lirot is going to be joining Stephanie Pointer, Daryl Heish in a minute, and he's going to be talking about that. He addressed City Council when they were seeking to vote on changing the hours of businesses, and so he'll talk about with our host this morning. 1913 North Nebraska Avenue. It's going to start at 6:30 to 7:30. I thought I'd show you that so that you can, for those of you that are interested, that have a vested interest in being heard about this issue, can be present. One last announcement before we start. Next Saturday, live on Florida U Judge, we have Judge Michael Chianti. He's going to be live and he's going to talk about Veterans Court in Hillsborough County. He's the judge that is presiding over that specialized court, and he's going to join Stephanie Pointer and Daryl Heish, who's also a veteran and served in the Navy for a very long time and just recently retired. He's going to be joining them and he's going to be talking about Veterans Court. So if you want to know more about Veterans Court, tune in please next Saturday on the 18th, Saturday at 11, so that you can learn more about the specialized court. In any of it, without further ado, we are going to, in a second, have Luke Lirot, Stephanie Pointer, and Daryl Heish.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Florida U Judge. We're proud to have Mr. Luke Lirot visiting with us this morning. Can you start out, Mr. Lirot, by giving us the basic Luke, which just tell us who you are and how important you are?
Well, I have lent my humble abilities to the practice of law since 1987. I grew up in Clearwater. I went to law school at the University of San Francisco, and I've done a lot of different things. I was out interning in the public defender's office when my mom took ill, and I came back to Clearwater and studied for the Florida bar. And she passed away before I got my results, but I ended up looking for a job, and I couldn't find one to save my life. So I had my ticket to practice law, and I ended up working for the Kelly Temporary Company, and myself and another guy got a job at the Bic lighter factory, and we silk screened 1 million Spuds McKenzie Bud Light lighters. And then I finally found a job with a gentleman that did real estate and bankruptcy. And he had done the closing when Joe Redner had purchased a club in Pinellas County in the late 80s, 1987. And the sheriff at that point in time was not a big fan of the performances put on at this particular club, so they arrested everyone. And as Mr. Redner was known to do, once they loaded up all the performers in the paddy wagon, he would bring over another busload from Tampa. So there were probably 60 or 70 criminal cases, and he was busy litigating with the city of Tampa back in the late 80s. And he called the guy that I started working for that did the real estate closing and said, "Hey, do you know anybody who can cover some arraignments?" And he looked at me and he said, "Did you do any arraignments when you were interning at the public defender's office in San Francisco, I said every day. And, I thought to myself, would you rather work with exotic performers or go to bankruptcy court? So it wasn't a tough decision. And I started to work for him. And then I went in-house. And from that point on, I started to do a whole lot of different work with places of public assembly, which will kind of bring us full circle to the topic of today. But from that, I had joined the First Amendment Lawyers Association. I was the president of the First Amendment Lawyers Association in the year 2000, been an active member ever since. And my practice is really focused primarily on First Amendment issues, civil rights issues. I do a substantial amount of criminal defense and a lot of civil litigation. And I've got a lot of different cases going on right now in both state and federal court where we are fighting for people's rights and quite honestly, dealing with governmental restrictions on places of public assembly. So I have made a lot of good friends. Haiti has been a dear friend and a great supporter over the years. It's a privilege to be with all of you. And Daryl, thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day. And I'm really privileged to be here. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you very much. Go ahead, Daryl.
I want, if I can segue into that, because it is Veterans Day and our veterans, we fight and we fight hard and we fight long for the rights of our citizens, our Americans, and for that First Amendment right and many others. So if we just jump right into this, I mean, you did have some dialogue in respect to the incident that took place over in Ybor. What is your humble? Just come right out the bag. What are you thinking?
Well, I majored in criminology, and here's the issue. Whenever you have a location that is an entertainment district that draws a lot of people, it draws people that may oftentimes be predators, may want to be on the outskirts of the collection of people coming for the entertainment. And that's exactly what's happened in Ybor City. And quite honestly, the worst thing they could do, the city, is to restrict the hours of operation, because all that does is it would make the people that want to engage in the predatory behavior have to do it a little bit earlier. It's not going to change anything about this particular area. And quite honestly, I represent a number of the clubs down there. And as I told the city council, those clubs are probably the safest places in the country. They've got security guards, they've got off-duty police, they have security consultants that come in and train them. They take the responsible vendor courses. I mean, they do everything they can to keep their people safe. And even their customers, when they're leaving, are kept safe. And as I understand it, this tragic event involved groups. There may be some investigation into gang-related issues. No one's come to that conclusion just yet in an official fashion. But I know when I went to the city council meeting, that was the meeting where they were discussing calling back the hours of operation at 1 a.m., a lot of people showed up. I think more than 40 people came immediately, and it was like 1 day notice. And they basically said, look, this is going to be financially devastating to us, and it's not going to help solve the problem. So that was kind of where we started from.
I'd like to point out, not only were those folks there, but those are folks who work until 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And they were there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to speak. And it seems like that 1 a.m. pushback has subsided. But the city is according to yesterday's La Gazzetta, or Thursday's La Gazzetta, the neighborhood enforcement, TPD, are coming around checking liquor licenses and making sure that everybody's up to date on what they're supposed to be doing, according to Mr. Mantiega. And it would seem that they really haven't given up on punishing the owners and the licensed vendors in Ybor. But what I'd like to point out is that on September the 28th, City Council spent probably, I think, 2 hours discussing the issues that they have with parking in Ybor, that the private parking lots aren't being monitored as they should be, and some of the criminal activity that's being pushed from the parking lots. And then the other discussion was that closing the street down causes a safety issue. So it would seem to me that there are some, that the folks who who already were operating in Ybor had already raised a white flag and said, hey, look, there's a problem here. According to that September 28th hearing, and city council knew there was a problem, but yet the problem hadn't been addressed. And then now the business owners, the people who are doing the right thing, the people who are giving folks jobs and keeping people, doing the right thing, are being punished because we have issues that need to be addressed and they haven't been addressed. And we're ignoring those issues and going back and riding the folks who are doing what they're supposed to do.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the issue from my perspective. The problem does not come from the clubs, not from my clients, not from their customers. Mm-hmm. The problem comes from people that are attracted to the area that are either not old enough to get into the clubs, don't want to spend the money to get in the club. So it's the area that attracts them, not the operation of the clubs. And quite honestly, many of them congregate in the parking lots. And I think there are two things. One is already on the books. There's already a juvenile curfew ordinance. Now, back in 1990 or thereabouts, there was an ordinance adopted by the city of Tampa that was a juvenile curfew ordinance. It was a little bit vague. It had a lot of problems, and it was found to be unconstitutional. They adopted another one, which basically is applicable only to Ybor City. And it's, basically it's a child, they call it child safety ordinance. But from my perspective, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better. And candidly, I don't know who, if anyone, would challenge the enforcement of that ordinance if it in fact kept some of the younger people. And obviously that was one of the characteristics of the group that had been engaged in this tragedy. If they kept them out of there and did a little bit of enforcement in that mechanism, and it came up during the city council meeting, and they were basically saying, well, where do we put them? What do we do when we pick up a dozen people that are 16 or 15? We don't know where to go. We don't know what to put them. And I was just thinking, well, you do what you do with any other level of enforcement. But I think step one should be get the parking lot areas well manned with security. The box you stick money in or run your credit card through. I mean, it's great. It's convenient. It adds to the profit base for the parking companies, but it doesn't keep anybody safe. So let's get back to the old-fashioned way of having somebody there, keep an eye on the cars, keep an eye on the people. And if there are people loitering in the parking lot, do what you can to send them home. And if they don't follow your directions as the representative of the owner of that property, get the police. Because in the last week after this shooting had taken place, from my understanding, it was literally the worst day any business has had in Ybor City in the last 30 years. It was empty. It was a ghost town, according to all of my clients, and it was rampant with highway patrol, the police, the sheriff's office. I mean, there were more law enforcement agents than there were members of the general public out there, and that was painful to them. So there needs to be some kind of balance struck. I'm interested to see what the police department does and what the comments and contributions of the community are going to be. But I think job one is let's get enough people out there that can keep an eye more than just on 7th Avenue, but on the adjoining parking areas, just to keep them safe. And if there are people there that are not participating in the business and just loitering for all practical purposes, and I know that, some of those old Supreme Court cases that have been the benchmark for finding things to be vague or unconstitutional dealt with loitering statutes. But in this instance, I think they'll be able to tell who's there doing legitimate business and who isn't. And for those people that aren't there legitimately, try to send them somewhere else, send them home, keep them safe just as much as anybody else.
So a few months ago, and real quick for our callers, if you want to call in, the number going across the screen, 727-214-4930. Call if you want to call in, please call in. But I want to say this. Several months ago, I went to city council, and I spoke to city council about what I like to call the biggest issue. And I said this also at Tampa Police criminal forum they had several months ago as well. And that was this. If you employ these young men and women, at one time the city council was asked to, and had a program that they would bring young men and women in, and they would employ them. They would help them, build up their job skills. And so if you build up their job skills and give them the tools for being able to work effectively and efficiently, they wouldn't be out this late. They'd be getting dressed for work. If at that time when city council was approached, we were asking city council to let those young people come and shadow behind the scenes with the constituents in city council. That was shut off. They didn't allow that to happen. But so because of that, and I told Tampa Police months ago, I said, if you give these young men and women applicable application, applicable jobs, and somewhere where they can put their talent to work, you wouldn't have to worry about them being up in the middle of the night talking about going and shoot, hurt, or harm anyone. But if you don't have anything to do, idle time is a devil's workshop. Now, with that same thing in mind, you don't punish the people who have the bars and the restaurant, because they can't control the activities of every person. They cannot control that activity, and they do not know the intent of and the heart of men. So I think, there's a lot of solutions, but I think that the one main solution that I see that we keep overlooking is the employment, the deployment, and skilling these young men and women up, which would also allow them to be able to not be out that late doing criminal activities.
I totally agree. I mean, obviously that's a much broader cultural issue, but you got to start somewhere, don't you?
You got to start, and we can't keep. And to that point, Attorney Lirot, that's what everyone keeps saying. We got to start somewhere. If as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, if it ain't working, you pivot and you start doing something totally different. So we already see these things are not working. Start doing it right now.
I agree.
So, what kind of positive changes can we make down there that aren't going to be punitive to our owners, that may be able to cut down on some of this? The parking lots, obviously. Is there any other good ideas that you heard from the folks? One of the most important things that I heard from one of the ladies down there at City Council was, she said, look, if you close us down at 1 o'clock, guess what? People are going to get in their cars and they're going to drive someplace else that's still open till 3. And I thought that was an excellent point, because it's absolutely true. If people think, oh, I can go someplace else and still continue the night on, I'm going to go ahead and continue the night on. And you're just setting folks up for failure doing that. But do your folks have any other positive things that they think, besides the parking lots? And I heard several times about the street being open, being a bigger problem than it was a solution, it sounds like to me.
I agree. And, going back the 30 plus years that I've been dealing with businesses in Ybor City, it's gone through a lot of changes. I mean, there was a period of time where they would literally shut the street down, just like Bourbon Street. I mean, it was nothing but pedestrian traffic. It was probably a little bit more widely publicized, and there were a lot more people there. But, you still have the numbers. The businesses are still successful. I think the concept is we shut down the street when the bars and the clubs and everything empties at the end of the night, so that we don't have everybody crowded on the sidewalk and nobody falls into the street and gets hit by a car. I don't know that makes that big a difference, but quite honestly, I think that my suggestion would be for the clubs, and I know that a lot of clubs do this. I think if there was a little bit more unified approach to this, they've got a lot of security staff. I mean, these clubs, they have a lot of customers. They've got a lot of security staffs. I would like to see, rather than the staff cleaning up the tables, why don't we just go out back? Why don't we basically escort some of these people to their cars, keep them safe, make sure that everybody's capable of driving, that they're not impaired, just go that extra step. And I've talked to my clients about that. And, obviously they don't want to put their employees in harm's way. But from my perspective, what's going to happen is going to happen. Let's take that extra step and keep people safe. And I think everybody's willing to explore that.
So let me ask you this. I to a certain degree, I believe that you shouldn't do anything, because I mean you're gonna have one-offs. You either, if you're on a motorcycle, you either have failed or you're about to fall. it's the same situation. So our young people that are in the Tampa market and around the Hillsborough County area, what's their alternative? What alternative do they have when you say, I'm up in the middle of the night, I'm hanging around at from 9 to 1? What's the alternative for these young people?
Well, I have been creatively thinking about that, and let's say that there's a budget to, pay extra security across the board. Wouldn't it be interesting? And I know that a lot of the people that were involved in this, they have identified themselves as rappers. Maybe we set up a educational program. Here's how to be a successful rapper. Here's how to videotape yourself. I mean, not just that, but all kinds of different things. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Daryl. Idle hands are the devil's plaything, no doubt about it. So give them something to do that is interesting to them, that's challenging to them, and may well lead to their greater personal success. Give them other options rather than just say, gee, we don't know what to do. Go home and go to bed. That's not going to work. You got to give them some other options. And quite honestly, there needs to be some kind of a financial commitment from the community to provide that. And I think it would be a huge boost. I mean, I would be more than happy to see our Bay Area experiment in that, because there's a lot of trouble out there, and it's easier to get a glass of water now than probably to carry a gun in your pocket, but not a whole lot. So that's the way it is. And I think that with the change in the laws and the concealed carry and everything else, I mean, there are a lot of firearms out there. Maybe there's some extra training that could attach to that. I think any experiment's worth taking a shot at, because nothing seems to be getting done and nothing seems to be getting better. And it's up to people like us to try to make some suggestions and see if maybe some steps can be taken to make an improvement that would help everyone.
Connie Burton wrote on her Facebook page a few days ago. She said that the downtown renovation is spending $25 million on the Strauss Center, $10 million on the Tampa Bay Theater, and several other millions of dollars on the train station. So you're talking right there, close to $35 million being spent in places that at the end of the day, you can allocate that money to the very thing that you just said. I think that was a brilliant idea. They can allocate, listen, as far as I'm concerned, the Strauss Museum, the Tampa Theater, those are buildings that get used periodically. Take some of that money and put it in exactly what you just said. I think that would be a brilliant idea. Take it and put it in the programs that these young people can go to a space where they can learn how to build up their talent, their skills, their gifts, so that they can then become, the number one faucet to change in a person's life is entrepreneurship. These young people can become entrepreneurs, but if you don't give them the training and allocate money away from those other areas, since we see this as a problem, change the money, change where the money is funneled.
A lot of it out there. And I don't think it would take a huge percentage of what's going into these other projects to develop the programs that we're talking about. I think it would make a huge difference. It really would. I know that they've tried that in other areas, and it has had some success. I mean, when you think about it, that's pretty much the genesis of the Boys and Girls Clubs. And those started back a long time ago to take care of some of the issues. And those have worked out well for younger people. I think if you take that same concept and go to a higher level age group with things that are, obviously there's games and sporting events and things like that, Boys and Girls Clubs. I think if we take it and give it just a little bit more sophistication so that it's appealing to someone older, someone, 14 to 17 years old, it would work.
If we don't try it, we'll never know. I think it will work.
And those dollars, and I'm going to say this because I spend a lot of time being a city council dork. All those dollars were CRA dollars. which is community redevelopment dollars, and they have a very, very specific way that they can be spent. I'm not saying you're right. You're wrong, because trust me, I don't always agree, but the thing I see and the way that may be able to be done, I think you're right, Daryl. I think it's a very interesting concept, but I think that those particular venues need to be offering more scholarships for some of their events in order to get kids in the door that wouldn't be in the door otherwise, so that they can learn about the arts and so that they can take the opportunity to move forward. I have a 14 and an 18-year-old. And my 18-year-old is at USF in the dorms, and we've had a conversation several times. I'm like, dude, nothing good happens after midnight. I really would prefer you back in the dorm by midnight. And that being said, I worked in bars for years. So, but I still think the same thing for him, because it's a different day and age than it was when I was his age. But that it seems like there are a few. I either read it there. Maybe I read it in La Gazzetta that there are a few 18 and up places down there, but the cover charge sounds to be pretty high. And I mean, that's to be expected. They have to make their money somehow or another.
Right.
And so they're counting on the fact that kids are coming in.
Right.
But those are like lined up around the block to get into because there's so few of them.
Right.
We have a comment from a reader from a viewer that said, "Thank you for the forum today. I find Ybor to be very safe. The one incident was very tragic and shouldn't have happened. I visit Ybor several times a month as an older person. I have never witnessed any incidents of any kind since I've been going. I've been in Tampa since 2018, and if there are some criminal incidents happening, where are you hearing and seeing these incidents occur?" That comes from Bruce City Terry. So basically, he's saying if there's incidents happening, because he's stating he's down there all the time, and he doesn't see these incidents taking place in the numbers that bring such a worry.
And that's been one of the issues that I think we should talk about next, and we'll segue into what I think a lot of the people in power refer to as the transitional phase in Ybor City. Obviously, the area is becoming the focal point of huge investments in residential development. And yep, the bars that stay open till 3, as successful as they are and as responsible as they are for making Ybor City the success that it is, now they're talking about morphing it into more residential. And a lot of my clients think that there is, and I'm not underscoring this tragedy, I'm just simply saying that there seems to be this vast outcry that makes Ybor City look so much more dangerous than it is. And that is being used as an excuse to try to limit the success and the hours of operation of these businesses, that in either a frustrated effort to try to address these problems or as a pretext, they're trying to target the clubs either through noise ordinances or, the inspections. Apparently, every club was thoroughly inspected the week after this with health agents and all the rest of that, health department, everybody else. And I mean, that there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm sure that they passed, but why is this being used? And I hate to suggest that it wasn't something that deserves our attention, because it does, but does it deserve the response that it's gotten and the immediate result being let's close down the clubs, whatever we can do to get that done? I think there's a lot of concern that there's not a legitimate effort to do that, and that these feigned dangerous issues are being used to try to punish these clubs. And a lot of people think that.
I concur. They don't shut down schools where they had school shootings.
They don't shut down East Tampa when they're shooting in East Tampa.
Right. So
Right.
it is a I almost think it's discriminatory. You don't run a business the way we want, the kind of business we want to go to. So therefore, you shouldn't be allowed to have a business. It seems like, and everybody's allowed to have, well, not everybody, but the bottom line is that if you're providing a legal service within the legal guidelines, then they shouldn't suffer the persecution for doing their business the way that they should. And I really like that our Ybor business owners came there and said, look, we employ people that nobody else wants to employ. We make sure that people have jobs. We make sure that people can make a living wage. I mean, not everybody, and this is the school teacher in me, not everybody is going to grow up and go to college. And those people can make a living wage working those jobs. They work hard and they don't deserve to be persecuted because of Tweedledee and Tweedledum out there on the street with a gun. That's just not fair to them. And I'm not calling anybody. I'm just saying I call my children Tweedledee and Tweedledum and let them argue about it. So bottom line is that there's not one bar owner was involved in this situation. Not one bar employee was involved in this situation. So why is there even any discussion about changes to the industry in that part of the city?
Right. It goes back to Attorney Lirot stated there's a transition taking place, and it would just be a longer conversation. This transition, everyone has eyes on that area down there. Everyone sees it to be something totally different than what it currently is. And so now you got deep pockets that are looking to come in there and do what they believe is the best. But, I recall listening to a city council meeting in Chicago the other day, and the guy said, until you bring these young kids to city council and you start hearing from them and start hearing what it is they're looking for, stand by, because they're going to start knocking at your door. You need to hear and deploy what these young kids are looking for. And I say young because they're 24, 25, 26. So because of that, and until you hear what they want to see happen, stand by, because they're going to keep taking what they believe is theirs or not. But that's what I think we're up against. Well, our in-station studio orchestrator is kind of patting us on the back and telling us it's about time to bring Florida U Judge to an end. Attorney Lirot, you have any final statements you like to state before we wrap this thing up?
Well, I think I'll wrap it up by saying I couldn't have been more pleased with the number of people that showed up at the city council meeting. I mean, the fact that they actually took the time to show up and let their feelings be known and express their opinions was huge. Instead of just me talking on behalf of everybody, coming out and letting them know that they were not going to do anything to harm these businesses without a whole lot of people reacting and letting them know it was a bad idea was profound. And I hope that the community keeps up that level of diligence and that level of participation, because like you guys, I mean, the more we all work together, the better the end result will be. And I'll just conclude by saying what a privilege to be with you both today. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think that TPD and City Council should invite these young people out and speak. And Attorney Lirot, one last question for you. Do you still have those that magazine collage that you put together when you were a little boy?
The nun tore it up. I don't have it, but I still make collages. Yes, sir.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Well, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us today and giving us an education on the folks in Ybor. We really do appreciate it.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
And again, we'll see you guys next week for an interview with Judge Michael Chiante, who is the judge for Veterans Treatment Court, which is something near and dear to our hearts, especially for Veterans Day. I want to wish my husband, who is a 34-year Army veteran, Happy Veterans Day, and Judge Chiante as well. And I appreciate everything that our military does for us. Y'all have it. And you too, Daryl.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all as well. And tell your husband Happy Veterans Day, staff.
All right.
We appreciate our Army vets as well.
Y'all have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you now.
Thank you all.